There are several reasons why you should know your audience a little bit better, or actually quite well. Whether you are creating a story that you're going to use in a presentation, or you're writing a story, or you're using it to convince someone or a potential client of getting to work with you, you want to know what makes them tick. You want to know what is important to them. When you know what makes them tick, you know how you can connect it to your story, which automatically makes your story more interesting for those that you're telling it to. You therefore want to research your audience. You want to dive into what it is that they want and what they know. But how do you do that? It's very easy to get lost in research. Trust me, I've been there. To make it easier, before you start researching, you want to make sure you set some goals for your research, not just for the story, but the goals for your research. What is it that you're actually trying to find out? You want to try focusing on the following goals. First, some general information. Who are they? Where are they from? What is their background? Demographics, you could say. Second is the cultural elements. Do they play a role in your story? If you tell a story from your perspective, it might not be the same perspective as that of the audience. Third, which problems, so to speak, does the audience have? What are their issues that they run into? Related, of course, to the topic of your story. And fourth, and this is a very important one, are your assumptions right? We all make assumptions. We all think that, hey, we know best. But are they right? Let me tell you a story that I've used quite a few times in my presentations. This is a story that is trying to explain that even though we are all experts, we're not always right. My wife is someone who really likes to decorate. She loves to decorate. And she collects interior design information all around the web. She has a Pinterest page. She uses Evernote for it. She actually has a real-life scrapbook. She knows her stuff. She is the expert in our house when it comes to interior decoration. A few years ago, she was talking to my daughters about her rooms, about how to change the rooms. And it was a very nice talk. And I was sitting it, we were on a holiday, I was sitting next to it, and I was listening to it. I enjoyed the conversation. At one point, my son shows up. My son, at that point, about 11, 12 years old, sat down with my wife and my daughters and listened to that conversation. And at one point he says, "You know what, Mom? I'd like to change my room as well." Now you have to know that the room of my son, as you can see on this picture, is filled with football posters. He loves football. So that's in his room now. My wife starts talking to him about his room. And it was a great conversation. They had so much fun together. They agreed on almost everything. They came up with a new bed and a new sofa and all sorts of new colors on the wall, new curtains, everything. I remember listening to it and thinking, this is what a conversation between a client and someone who is working for the client must be like. They're in complete agreement. That all changed at one point. It changed when my wife at one point said, "You know what? I remember that I saw this wallpaper. I think I had bookmarked it on my Pinterest page." So she grabs her iPad and starts looking into her Pinterest page. And while she's talking and while she's searching, she says to my son, "You know what? And then we put up the wallpaper, and then we can finally get rid of those stupid football posters." And the face of my son just changed. From really happy, he went to kind of sad and quiet. And he didn't say much for the next few minutes. And then at one point he said, "But Mom, you know, those football posters, they're the best thing in my room." And from that point on, The conversation changed because now he didn't trust her anymore. He didn't trust what my wife wanted to bring into the room. Even though just before, they had a conversation which was great and they agreed on everything. But the one little thing, the assumption made that the football posters were stupid, which in my wife's eyes they might be, made that he didn't trust her anymore. This is a story that I've used quite a few times in my presentations to show that we must be careful as an expert talking about assumptions. The same goes for you as a speaker. You want to make sure that your assumptions are right. Even though you might be the expert, you don't want to make the mistake of saying the wrong thing, which will break the trust of your audience. Okay, let's find some information. How do you find information about your audience? There are several different ways. Let me talk about some tools in a minute. But first, let's talk about some real life research. The best way to get to know your potential audience is to talk to them. And if you don't know your potential audience, you might have clients already. You might have organizers of an event that you can talk to. In person, try to ask questions about what it is that makes them tick, what it is that makes them show up at the conference or the event or the pitch that you're at. Second, you want to look at data. Data that is your own, like your Google Analytics, your Facebook Insights. It shows what type of people are visiting your website anyway, so that gives you a little bit more information. But also look at other people's information. Research papers that have been done in your industry. Find the right data. What might be a good idea is to create a customer persona. When you create a customer persona, you're creating a person that is your potential audience. Now, nobody in your audience is exactly the same, so you want to be a little bit careful with this, that you don't assume that everybody's the same. So maybe create a few different personas. But you want to ask a few questions about your customer persona. Why is he here? What makes that they want to be at this conference? What are questions that they might have coming into this conference? What might they think of me as a speaker? So maybe they think, who is this guy? Or maybe they're thinking, why should I listen to this guy? There's a lot of online tools that you can use. Let me highlight a few. AnswerThePublic.com is one that I like a lot. It gives you a quick insight into what it is that people are talking about online. These are Google searches that people do. So you type in a topic and it will tell you the type of questions that people have around the topic. Question and answer sites like Quora.com are very useful. Quora.com is a goldmine for you as somebody researching your potential audience, because people are asking the questions that you want to be answering in your presentations or in your story. And then of course look at other social media channels like Instagram, like Twitter. What is popular is one thing to look at. Look at the hashtags, but also look at the discussions that people are having and look at the type of information that they're sharing. Once you've gathered all the information, you want to prioritize it. What is really important and what's less important? Really keep in mind here that you don't want to be that person who just looks at the information from your own perspective. Look at the perspective from the audience that you're researching. The next step is to connect what's important with your core message. So which elements, especially the problems, are elements that you have an overlap with? What is it that you can help them solve, for example, when it comes to problems? Or what is it where you have experience? And then you want to start looking into what elements that you are knowledgeable on fit within the total crux of the story. You want to make a note of 3 to 5 points that are connected to you, your audience, and the story. The more it's connected, the better you can work with it. The more personal it is, like the story of my son and my wife, the more people will like you for it.